This story begins with a murder that deeply unsettled India's legal system, involving Sukhmanpreet Singh Sidhu, also known as Sippy Sidhu. Sippy was a well-known corporate lawyer and national-level shooter whose death shocked his influential family and the broader legal community. His family, deeply embedded in law and order, expected justice. However, the case took unforeseen turns and revealed a complex web of personal and professional conflicts, power plays, and potential corruption. The mystery surrounding Sippy Sidhu's murder quickly drew public interest, leaving many to wonder who would dare commit such a crime in the heart of Chandigarh, under the nose of the legal elite. Chandigarh, where this murder took place, is a major administrative hub, housing the capitals of Punjab and Haryana, as well as a separate union territory. Sippy Sidhu, a native of this vibrant city, had just returned from a month-long trip to Canada in September 2015. Sippy's life had been marked by professional accomplishments and a close circle of friends. Coming from a highly respected family within the legal system, Sippy was well-connected and familiar with people of influence, making the sudden tragedy of his murder in such a familiar place all the more shocking. Upon his return from Canada, Sippy Sidhu reconnected with his childhood friend, Kalyani Singh, whom he had known for many years. They spent the evening together on September 18, 2015, catching up after Sippy's absence. 2 days later, on September 20th, Sippy received a phone call around 9 p.m., which he informed his mother was a quick errand and assured her he would be back soon. However, he didn't return that night. The mysterious call would later become central to the investigation, as it seemed to have drawn Sippy into a trap. Despite attempts to reach him, Sippy's family received no response, heightening their worry and leading them to suspect something was terribly wrong. By midnight, Sippy's mother, Deepinder Kaur, received a chilling phone call from a woman who claimed to be from Chandigarh's Sector 26 police station. She informed Deepinder that Sippy had been in an accident and instructed the family to come to the hospital. When they arrived, the family discovered the harrowing truth. Sippy had been shot multiple times at close range. The brutal nature of the murder suggested premeditation. The discovery shattered Sippy's family, leaving them devastated and thrust into the media spotlight as news of the crime spread. In the initial days following Sippy Sidhu's murder, the investigation took a surprising turn when an eyewitness from Chandigarh's Sector 27 neighborhood came forward. This eyewitness reported hearing several gunshots on the night of September 20th, 2015. Driven by curiosity, the witness went to a window and claimed to see two figures fleeing the scene in haste, a man and a woman. This woman, according to the witness, had short hair, a distinguishing characteristic that would later play a crucial role in identifying her. Her presence at the scene was both unusual and suspicious, as it hinted at a possible setup involving someone Sippy trusted. The eyewitness account provided investigators with their first significant clue, suggesting that Sippy's death may not have been random, but rather a calculated crime involving people he knew. Sippy's murder left the legal community in Chandigarh reeling. He was not only a talented lawyer and successful bodybuilder, but also the grandson of Justice S.S. Sidhu, a retired Punjab and Haryana High Court judge, and the son of Advocate General J.P. Sidhu. Sippy's family was well respected and deeply connected within the legal circles. The brutal murder of someone from such a prestigious family shook the legal world, raising questions about safety and justice even for the most influential figures. The high-profile nature of the case ensured extensive media coverage, putting pressure on local law enforcement to solve it swiftly. However, the police's inability to make substantial progress soon cast a shadow of frustration and skepticism over the legal community and the public. The initial investigation into Sippy Sidhu's murder faced several hurdles, leaving law enforcement stumped and frustrated. After the discovery of his body, the police worked swiftly to collect evidence and interview potential witnesses. They explored multiple leads, including personal and professional conflicts Sippy might have been involved in, given his status as a lawyer and bodybuilder. They questioned his family, friends, and colleagues, hoping to uncover any enemies or motivations for his murder. However, key clues, such as surveillance footage from nearby areas and witness testimonies, failed to yield clear results. No one had seen anything suspicious, and the initial forensic evidence didn't point directly to any one person. The police also found that there were no signs of forced entry into Sippy's home, or any indications of robbery, which suggested that the murder was not a random act of violence. Despite these efforts, the investigation hit a dead end, with no suspects or concrete leads to follow. This stagnation was particularly frustrating for Sippy's family, who believed that the crime was more than just a random act and that someone close to Sippy might have been involved. After months of no progress and mounting public pressure, Sippy Sidhu's family requested that the case be handed over to the Central Bureau of Investigation, CBI, India's premier investigative agency. The family, feeling that local police were unable to make headway in the case, hoped the CBI could bring new expertise and resources to the investigation. In April 2016, the CBI officially took over the case, re-examining all the evidence that had been collected by local authorities. They began their investigation with a fresh perspective, re-interviewing witnesses and reanalyzing the crime scene. They were particularly interested in the eyewitness account of a short-haired woman seen fleeing the scene, which had previously been dismissed as inconclusive. The CBI also sought to examine Sippy's personal life more closely, suspecting that the answer to the murder might lie in his relationships. Despite this renewed effort, the investigation continued to encounter obstacles, and no significant breakthroughs were made in the first year of the CBI's involvement. By 2017, the investigation had reached a standstill, and despite the efforts of both the local police and the CBI, there were still no solid leads or arrests in the case of Sippy Sidhu's murder. Desperate for new information, the Central Bureau of Investigation, CBI, decided to involve the public by offering a reward for information leading to the identification or capture of the killers. The CBI officially announced a financial reward, initially set at $500,000, roughly $6,000, which was later increased to $1,000, about $12,000. The reward announcement was accompanied by multiple public appeals from the CBI and Sippy's family, urging anyone with knowledge of the crime to come forward. Special televised broadcasts and newspaper advertisements sought witnesses who might have seen anything unusual around the time of the murder. The authorities also released details about a possible eyewitness, a woman who had been seen fleeing the scene of the murder. They made it clear that the mysterious woman was not a suspect, but someone who could provide crucial information. However, despite the significant reward and the widespread media coverage, the response from the public was disappointing. The authorities received only a handful of tips, most of which led nowhere. No one came forward with concrete evidence, and the identity of the woman remained a mystery. It was increasingly apparent that whoever was responsible for the crime knew how to cover their tracks effectively. This failure to produce new leads left Sippy Sidhu's family and the general public frustrated and disillusioned, as they feared the case might be left unsolved forever. After 5 long years of stagnation in the investigation, a new lead emerged, breathing life back into the case. It came in the form of a renewed focus on Kalyani Singh, a woman with deep ties to Sippy Sidhu, who had been under suspicion from the very beginning. Initially, Kalyani had been one of many people questioned, but with no solid evidence linking her to the crime, she was largely dismissed. However, as investigators reviewed new evidence, they found that several aspects of Kalyani's life were now suspicious. In particular, a closer look at her relationship with Sippy revealed emotional tension and resentment that may have festered over time. It came to light that Sippy had recently distanced himself from Kalyani after a series of personal disagreements, including an incident in which she had been involved with another man, which deeply humiliated him. The CBI began to believe that Kalyani, perhaps fueled by anger and betrayal, had developed a motive to eliminate Sippy. The new lead was further corroborated by testimony from individuals who recalled that Kalyani had been very secretive in the days leading up to the murder, and a more thorough investigation into her activities revealed several inconsistencies in her alibi. After the murder of Sipi Sidhu, a significant clue emerged: his iPhone, which had been found at the crime scene. The phone was an important piece of evidence because it was one of the few things that could potentially unlock the mystery of his final moments. Initially, local investigators tried to retrieve information from the phone, but they were unsuccessful in accessing the data due to the phone's security features. At this point, the investigation took a pivotal turn. Given the high-profile nature of the case and the lack of solid leads, the Central Bureau of Investigation, CBI, called in experts from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, for help. The FBI's expertise in digital forensics allowed them to bypass the iPhone's security systems and recover crucial information that had been deleted. Upon examining the phone, the FBI uncovered a treasure trove of evidence: deleted text messages, call logs, and media files that had been intentionally wiped by someone trying to cover their tracks. These messages revealed conversations between Sipi and Kalyani, his ex-girlfriend, with some texts suggesting significant tension between the two. These recovered files indicated that Sipi had recently rejected Kalyani, possibly contributing to her emotional distress and sense of betrayal. Furthermore, the phone also revealed that Sipi had been in contact with several people close to Kalyani, including Suraj, a man with a criminal background. The involvement of the FBI in retrieving and analyzing the iPhone's contents was instrumental in shifting the direction of the investigation, as the recovered data not only shed light on Sipi's final communications, but also started pointing to Kalyani as a key figure in the case. The evidence suggested that she may have had a more significant role in the events leading to his murder than initially suspected. As the iPhone data was analyzed, the investigation began to piece together a more comprehensive picture of the events surrounding Sipi's death. The information from the phone, combined with interviews and new witnesses, helped fill in many of the gaps. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence was a series of incriminating phone calls and text exchanges between Kalyani and Suraj, a known criminal who had allegedly been in contact with Kalyani around the time of Sipi's murder. It became evident that Kalyani may have used her personal relationship with Suraj to orchestrate the killing, with some evidence suggesting that she may have hired him to carry out the murder in exchange for a financial incentive. Additionally, surveillance footage from nearby CCTV cameras in the park where Sipi's body was discovered revealed a car that had been seen near the crime scene around the time of the murder. Upon further investigation, the car was traced back to Suraj, linking him directly to the scene. This discovery suggested that Kalyani had likely used Suraj to execute her plan of revenge against Sipi. Furthermore, the investigation revealed that Kalyani had been at the crime scene shortly before the murder occurred. Witnesses confirmed seeing her in the vicinity, although she had denied any involvement in Sipi's death. Her contradictory statements raised suspicions, further solidifying the theory that she had planned and executed the murder in conjunction with Suraj. With these mounting pieces of evidence, it became increasingly clear that Sipi's death was not a random act of violence, but a premeditated act of vengeance, with Kalyani as the mastermind. Sipi Sidhu and Kalyani Singh's relationship had been complex, intense, and ultimately fraught with emotional turmoil. Initially, the two were close friends, and at one point, romantically involved. However, their relationship turned sour over time, largely because of Sipi's increasing distance and Kalyani's obsessive attachment to him. After their romantic relationship ended, Sipi, who had grown uncomfortable with Kalyani's obsessive behavior, tried to sever ties. He reportedly tried to be clear with her, but Kalyani, unable to accept his rejection, became emotionally unstable. She couldn't let go of the idea of being with him and found herself frequently reaching out to him, despite his reluctance to re-engage. Sources close to the pair described how Kalyani struggled with jealousy when she learned that Sipi had begun seeing another woman. She felt humiliated, betrayed, and rejected. This emotional vulnerability seemed to spiral into a more toxic obsession. Her fixation on Sipi was marked by repeated attempts to reconnect, from phone calls and text messages to unwanted visits. This behavior only pushed Sipi further away, contributing to a growing sense of resentment and anger in Kalyani. At one point, it became clear that Sippy had moved on with his life, but Kalyani remained emotionally stuck in the past. She was unable to deal with the breakup, which eventually led to her harboring deep feelings of hatred toward him. This internalized pain and jealousy festered and became the driving force behind her eventual decision to take drastic measures. Her inability to move past the relationship and the increasing tension between them played a crucial role in the motivations that led to Sippy's death. Kalyani's sense of betrayal and rejection evolved into a desire for revenge. While it's unclear exactly when Kalyani decided to kill Sippy, it became evident over time that she was formulating a plan to exact punishment for what she viewed as his emotional abandonment. In the months leading up to Sippy's death, Kalyani seemed to oscillate between intense jealousy and the delusion that she could reconcile with him. However, the more Sippy distanced himself, the more Kalyani's anger and obsession grew. She reportedly spent long hours stewing over her perceived humiliation, and some sources suggest she began discussing her feelings of betrayal with close friends, hinting that she might take extreme measures to address the emotional wound. Kalyani's plan for revenge took shape when she reportedly began communicating with people in Sippy's circle. It appeared that she was trying to manipulate the situation in her favor, and she might have even begun trying to use others to get close to him once again. Investigators would later uncover that she was in contact with Suraj, a man with a criminal background, in the days leading up to the murder. It was evident that Kalyani's plan was not just an emotional outburst, but a carefully thought-out scheme to hurt Sippy, perhaps as a final form of control over someone who had rejected her. The emotional toll that Kalyani had experienced, combined with her increasing sense of vengeance, set the stage for what would ultimately be a murder plot. She used her knowledge of Sippy's habits and vulnerabilities to lure him into a situation where she could execute her plan. This included her idea of meeting with him under the pretext of making amends, though it would later be revealed that the meeting was a trap. By doing so, she hoped to regain some semblance of power over Sippy and bring closure to her emotional turmoil. However, closure came in the form of an irreversible and fatal decision, one that ultimately ended in violence. The murder of Sippy Sidhu was not a random crime of passion, but rather a well-planned and executed contract killing. Investigators would later uncover that Kalyani had enlisted the help of Suraj, a known criminal, to carry out the murder on her behalf. Suraj had a history of violent offenses, and was reportedly someone Kalyani had known for some time. It appeared that she used her connection with him to orchestrate Sippy's death. The nature of the murder, an execution-style shooting, suggested that the killer was someone with experience and knowledge of how to carry out such a crime. It seemed that Suraj, who was identified as the actual killer, had been hired by Kalyani to murder Sippy. Investigators would later uncover that Kalyani and Suraj had several interactions leading up to the murder. Surveillance footage from a nearby CCTV camera showed a car matching the description of Suraj's vehicle near the scene of the crime just before Sippy was found dead. This, combined with testimonies from witnesses who described seeing Suraj in the area, helped solidify his involvement. Kalyani's role in the murder, as the mastermind behind the contract killing, became clearer as the investigation unfolded. She may have tried to distance herself from the crime by manipulating Suraj into taking full responsibility for the physical act of murder. Yet, evidence, such as phone records showing communications between Kalyani and Suraj, as well as financial transactions, pointed directly to her as the orchestrator of the plot. In the end, what seemed like an emotional act of revenge was revealed to be a cold, calculated plan to have Sippy killed, carried out by a criminal who Kalyani had trusted to do her bidding. In 2022, after years of investigation, the police finally had enough evidence to arrest Kalyani Singh. Her arrest came after crucial evidence was uncovered, including digital records from Sippy's iPhone, financial transactions between her and Suraj, and testimonies linking her to the crime. The authorities were confident they had a solid case against her. However, Kalyani's arrest and subsequent release on bail shocked many. Her release sparked outrage, particularly from Sippy's family and the public, who believed that the evidence against her was overwhelming. Many saw her release as a failure of the justice system, and people began to demand that she be kept in custody until the trial was concluded. The backlash was significant, with protests calling for justice in Sippy's name. Kalyani, during her brief time after release, maintained her innocence. She continued to deny involvement in Sippy's death, claiming that she had nothing to do with the crime. Her legal defense argued that there was insufficient evidence to prove her direct involvement and suggested that the case against her was circumstantial. Yet, the mounting evidence, including the data from the iPhone and the financial links to Suraj, made it increasingly difficult for her to avoid suspicion. Despite her release, the case continued to draw public attention. There were widespread calls for her to be rearrested and held accountable, particularly given the apparent severity of the crime and the chilling nature of the revenge plot. People wanted justice for Sippy, and many felt that Kalyani should not be allowed to walk free. Kalyani Singh's trial for the murder of Sippy Sidhu began in 2023, and it quickly became a high-profile case that captivated the public's attention. The courtroom was filled with media coverage, and many people, particularly those close to Sippy, eagerly awaited the outcome. The trial was not just about a murder, it was about betrayal, emotional abuse, obsession, and the destructive consequences of rejection. The prosecution presented strong evidence, including digital forensics, witness testimonies, and the financial transactions linking Kalyani to Suraj. The recovered iPhone messages were pivotal in showing that Kalyani had been in contact with Suraj and that she had likely orchestrated the murder. Additionally, Sippy's family members gave emotional testimonies, recounting the pain they had suffered after losing him, which added weight to the prosecution's case. Despite the overwhelming evidence against her, Kalyani continued to plead not guilty, and her defense team worked to discredit the case. They argued that there was no direct evidence linking her to the actual act of murder, and that the accusations were based on circumstantial evidence. However, as the trial progressed, it became more apparent that Kalyani had played a pivotal role in orchestrating the murder, even if she hadn't physically committed the crime. The public response to the trial was intense. Many people rallied behind Sippy's family, demanding justice, while others questioned whether Kalyani would be held fully accountable for her actions. The case highlighted not only the personal dynamics of the people involved, but also broader societal issues such as obsession, emotional abuse, and the potential for violence in toxic relationships. As the trial continued, the public outcry grew, with many people passionately debating whether Kalyani would face the full consequences of her actions. The case became a symbol of the dangers of unrequited love and obsession, and the trial's outcome would set an important legal precedent for how cases of emotional revenge and contract killings are handled in India.